Back in September 2019, AOC launched their insanely popular 24 GTU monitor, which brought not only 1080p 144Hz IPS monitors to the market at all, but brought them at an insanely low price tag and with pretty exceptional quality too. Now skip forward to October 2020, and it looks like AOC want to do it again in the 4K market. That's where this, the U28G2AE, comes in. This is a 4K 60 IPS monitor with adaptive sync and for an astonishingly low, just £250 price tag. But is it any good? Well, let's find out. Now that price tag makes this one of the cheapest 4K monitors that you can buy, IPS or not, right now. They do have some strong competition from the likes of LG with their 27UL600, but that's a touch more, and this is clearly slightly more geared towards being a specifically gaming monitor. That's clear from nothing other than the on-screen menu. It has an entire tab dedicated to gaming options, specifically not only gamer profile modes, changing the colors and that sort of thing, but it has an option to enable low input lag and 3 levels of overdrive to help speed up the panel's response time. And those options work. With overdrive disabled, I was seeing it take about 7 milliseconds for the panel to go from black to white, which, while not the absolute slowest, certainly isn't the fastest. But when you enable overdrive, that drops it down to just 5, which is a healthy improvement. Now, it is a little bit slower to go from a lighter colour to darker, as overdrive can't help as much there, but it takes around about 1 frame at 60Hz, or about 17 milliseconds, for that transition to happen. Now, it does have a bit of ghosting. Specifically about 1.5 frames worth, or about 23 milliseconds with overdrive off, and it does take that around 7 milliseconds for when the frame starts being drawn to when it actually is nice and crisp and clear, but at 60Hz, each frame is being displayed every 16.667 milliseconds, so you have that frame nice and crisp on screen for a fair while. Interestingly, with overdrive enabled, it does improve the time that it takes from when the frame starts being drawn to you seeing the UFO nice and clearly. That's good. However, it does seem to create what is literally a white ghost image on screen. You can see it slightly here, but let me swap over to a different clip that's using the UFO test at 3840 pixels per second rather than 960, and you can see it much more clearly. As you can see, there is literally an entire copy of the UFO all in white, except for what used to be the blue of the alien shirt is now a green blob instead. I'm really not sure why this is happening. I guess it's some form of overshoot, but either way, I would leave it on the medium setting, as that issue is less prevalent, but it still helps speed up the response time enough that that's where I'd call it nice and balanced. As for the low input lag mode, that also works well too. Testing with my time sleuth over HDMI, it reported just 1.9 milliseconds of latency at the top of the display, which, while that's not the fastest time I've ever seen, it's far from the slowest. I also record the total system latency, or click-to-photon latency as NVIDIA calls it, using NVIDIA's LDAT tool. That's in CSGO. I have a 1080 Ti literally strapped to the bottom of this table that plays CSGO even at 4K at well over 300, closing on 400 FPS, and interestingly for this monitor, the best average that I could get was around 71 milliseconds. Now, that's nowhere near as bad as trying to, say, play on Google Stadia, but it's very bad compared to the standard type of monitor that I review here for 1080p and even 1440p, although I should make it clear that because of the good time sleuth results, I'm more inclined to believe that this is an issue with the system or with the game running at 4K, rather than an inherent issue with the monitor itself. But either way, the gaming experience on this is pretty great. Of course, being a 4K 60Hz panel, it's probably not the sort of monitor you'd pick up if playing fast-paced games like CSGO are the sole thing you want to do with it. I imagine this is better for the more social, sporting and story-based games where the core fundamentals aren't fast response times and rapid movement. But even still, I still had a good time playing on it. Of course, 60Hz isn't the best for this, but the ghosting wasn't something that I actively noticed in-game. I was still able to click on some heads when I needed to, and so I wouldn't have trouble recommending this as a gaming monitor. If you're considering picking this up to use with your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, I think this would be a pretty good fit. For the majority of games that you'd play on that, the sorts of inputs you generally have to those consoles, I think you'd have a good time. Admittedly, I probably still wouldn't game at 4K on a console just yet, but if that's what you're after, I definitely wouldn't say no to this. It also has 2 HDMI ports and a DisplayPort, so you could in theory hook up both consoles and a PC and play whatever, wherever. If content consumption is on the cards too, as I expect it would be, I think you'll have a pretty good time with this. The IPS panel they use here is pretty nice, offers 300 nits of peak brightness, which isn't enough to even meet VESA's lowest end HDR400 standard, so no HDR content for this thing, but 300 nits is plenty bright enough for SDR content. It's bright enough for any scenario you could throw at it besides maybe direct sunlight, at which point I would recommend you move the monitor. Colors are pretty nice to the eye from the content consumption perspective, and if you want to do some more creative work on them, like photo or video editing, or maybe some games development or 3D modeling, it's also not too bad either. The colors were reporting as just shy of 100% of sRGB coverage, although the curve was slightly off, especially in the greens. It covered 81% of Adobe RGB and 84% of DCI-P3, and you can tune that, and especially if you do have a calibration tool like the Datacolor Spider X, I think this will work fine for you, but it's clearly not its primary directive. Plus, the added crispness you get of having a 4K panel in such a relatively small size does give just a little bit touch extra quality to your viewing experience. For me personally, I would argue that 28 inches is probably slightly too small for me to really enjoy 4K on a regular basis. I think I would personally prefer 32 inch or maybe even larger for 4K, as 1440p fills this 27 inch, 28 inch niche for me personally just fine. But if that's what you're after, I think you're going to have a very good time with this monitor, especially at that incredibly low price tag. Sure, the panel isn't quite as fast as maybe I would like it to be, but I didn't really notice that while gaming, and so if you're after a 4K 60 gaming monitor, especially for that £250 price tag, I'd be pretty happy to recommend this. If your use case swings a little bit more towards content creation and consumption, then those LG options might be a touch better, but for gaming, this is a great shout. There is one caveat though. Pricing on this monitor seems to be incredibly inconsistent. Curry's PC World are selling this for £250, as I'm sure that I've already showed you, but Box.co.uk are selling it for £280, and Amazon has it listed for over £300. And at that price, I think I'd probably go with the LG one, even regardless of my use case, because not only would it be cheaper, but arguably it'd be a slightly nicer, possibly even slightly faster out of the box panel, and that would be my preference. If you can find this for $250, maybe even up to that $270, then this is still a great shout, but anything over that starts to get some pretty tough competition. With that said, those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the U28G2AE? Is it a monitor you'd pick up yourself, or would you go with the LG options instead, or maybe something else entirely, 1080p or 1440p instead? Do let me know in those comments down below. And if you want to check out this monitor, or maybe pick one up yourself, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description down below. That's an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store. We can see pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary. There are also a whole load of other ways to both stay up to date on the videos, like hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification icon, and supporting the channel, like hitting the YouTube join button right next to the subscribe button to get access to our Money Men Discord chat, sponsor free videos, and some cool emojis too. There's also a link to Patreon if you'd prefer to support there instead, or other affiliate links for places like Overclock UK if you're buying from there. There's VPN options, Humble Bundle, Streamlabs OBS, and a whole load of stuff, so feel free to check it out. Otherwise, I'll leave some more videos on the end cards for you to check out if you want to keep watching. The Monitor Reviews playlist probably springs to mind. And otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, and we'll see you on the next video.